Hello, I am Owen McGubbins here for Right Aligned, and I'm here today with Michele Bona. Hi, Michele.
Hello, and thank you for having me here.
You are
Uh,
most welcome. Do you want to just give us a bit of introduction to yourself?
yes, of course. I am an art director freelance. I work in England for about 10 years, and then I moved to Milan recently. I spent majority of my career working in advertising, and I work for clients based in UK, EU, and the US.
Nice. Give us a bit of a background as to how you made the transition. Because when we spoke before, you were saying that you started off doing like some design and then put in a lots of effort to get yourself into like an AD position.
Yeah, so I think my background is quite unusual because I did graphic design when I was in high school, an art institute in Venice, and then at university, weirdly, I decided to do art marketing. It was really fun, and then it paid off in the long term. And then I decided to move to England, and I I um, I just wanted to go back into design and be more creative. So I was doing like working for an event company, really cool. Where I went to Buckingham Palace with the Queen, the former Prince of Wales, now King of England. So yeah, a lot of it was really funny because also like I didn't have any clue about British celebrity. Obviously, everyone knows David Beckham, but I didn't have any clue. So they sent me to this table, and then all my colleagues were like terrified to serve wine and stuff. And then for me, we were just like normal customers. Also, I didn't have a TV at the time, so I was like, fine. And then I worked for this small digital studio in Shoreditch called Browser London. It was really funny. We were like 10 guys in a Shoreditch, very East London vibe. They were making like responsive websites. And then I moved to MNC Saatchi for 3 years. That was my first permanent job as a digital designer. And then it's there. Then I learned the basic the world of advertising, and I saw then there were the creative teams, how the agency work, like the partnership from art director and copywriter. So I was like, yeah, this looks cool. And then at one point I made a decision of become an art director because as designer I felt a little bit like, and then this is my personal experience, but I felt a little bit like a Mac monkey. So I was making other ideas pretty, and then I was like, I want to make my own ideas pretty, and then doing design. So I did this transition between design to art direction, and it was very difficult because I think my experience in UK back in the days was like you really need to be the master of one. And I remember when I approached recruiters saying, "Oh, I can do a little bit of design and concept and editing. I also do animation." And I remember they were looking at me. I was like, I don't know how to label you. Are you a designer and you're not a director?" And then by the time I learned to say like I was a conceptual art director who can also do like design, and then I felt like people were okay, now I can understand more or less who you are. And I never wanted to be specialized in one thing. And then I remember in the industry at that time, there is one very famous ECD, well, it's actually a founder of a really famous agency in London, who said like you have to be good at one thing, right? So I remember one of his talk. He said, I searched for a book wrote by Picasso. I found none. I searched for like a painting done by Shakespeare, found none. And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. But then I look back what happened in the country where I'm from, and I was like,
The
okay,
Renaissance.
if I think about Leonardo, he was like an engineer. He had like really deep knowledge in medicine, anatomy. He was a painter, and probably the Mona Lisa is probably the most famous painting in the world. And then I look back again, I was like, fine, Michelangelo, he was an architect, a sculptor, a painter. So if things are interconnected, you can be you can be good at different things, to be like a jack of all trades. And it's a good thing. And then I also think these days with technology, so much available, like, you can subscribe for like Adobe, and you got all the apps, and you can just try and do some animation, do some video editing, go on YouTube. There are plenty of videos that teach you how to shoot. You got a phone, you don't have to buy expensive equipment. So it's much easier to kind of try and experiment with different stuff. And on the long term, this thing then was a weakness became my selling point, because then there was a recession time, or simply like the client with the same budget, they wanted more things. So at one point it became useful if you can do different things, because you can pay one person rather than two. So this idea of having specialists, it just like went a little bit down. And then I remember when I approached clients saying like, oh, I can also design, they were like, great, we want you. Also because the country where I'm from, we tend to kind of like, for example, in here, the art director also does design. So the craft is very important, because for all the thing about the made in Italy, and it's a very, Italy is famous for the craftsmanship and artisanship. So for us, there's also like the manual side, it's a super important. And yeah, that really like pay off in the end. But at the beginning, it was very frustrating, because they didn't know where to put me, or what kind of label can give me.
So what do you think was the change? Was it because I have the same thing? It's like I've always dabbled. I'll try this, I'll try that. I've made animations for client, done illustrations, made websites, to design, whatever, bit of copywriting here and there. So do you think the change was the people that you were talking to, or about the kind of work that you did? Because I know what you mean. I talk to lots of people when they say, oh yeah, when I talk to somebody and say, oh, I do this, not that, and the next thing, they have the same look of, I don't know where to fit you in. It's like with music, where it's like, oh, what genre do you play? And if you can't describe a genre, then it's like, oh, people aren't, like, they don't know how to understand it. So was it more as you got better at describing what you did that it became easier for you to then communicate? Or was it like, all right, you pick a primary and then everything else becomes secondary?
I think helping people to pick up a primary, so it is helpful. I think it's also the nature of the business. As I said before, like less money, and they need more, they need people with more skills. And then I also think the new generation of creatives, they are way more multitasking than the previous one, even than me. And then because of the technology or the options available. And yeah, I think that I can see the new generation of creative going towards this direction. And I think the mindset of people change, the market condition change, and all these factors like help this sort of like transition between like a big with just one thing, or like be able to kind of like do multiple things. Also, it depends as well, like the country where you are and where you operate. For example, as I said, in Italy, people are expecting that an art director also does design. And I remember my grandmother also say, like, just learn everything, like you never know. It will become helpful one day.
Something to fall back on, a big list of skills to fall
Exactly.
back
You
on.
never know. Like it can be always helpful. You never know. So learn it now.
Yeah. So what do you see as because you've obviously having worked in different places, what do you see as the differences between working in the UK, working in Italy? Like, do you see changes in, yeah, the way people approach it, or beyond just the skill set?
I think the way you kind of concept and the principle of how you concept a campaign, it's still the same. So the theory is still the same. I think what makes different is, for example, like it's the sort of tone and the style and the taste. So I remember when I worked with UK client, because maybe there is a lot of competition, especially in London. And I remember it was always like, how can we be provocative? How can we kind of attract the attention? Because at one point, I think in the advertising, there is one big main rule, right? Grab my attention, hold my attention. That's it. When you do this, I think it's fine. Then you can come up with different theories, different models, but at the end of the day, it's just one main rule, hold my attention. I do feel that culturally there is something different. For example, like in UK, you're much more liberal, and then so you can do things that maybe in our country you can't do because it can be seen as more political, and then you also have to consider. And for example, in Italy, we got like a big influence from the church, Catholic Church. So, for example, I did this campaign for Luna Daily with Tom and Fiona, two fellow creators, did this campaign together for Luna Daily, and then there was a massive billboard with the word vulva, huge. I don't think it will never happen here. There is a little bit of, also, for example, like when you do a casting thing. So I remember like in the UK, everyone was like, make sure there is a lot of diversity, make sure that everyone is represented, because it is important to be represented. I mean, obviously, if it's a film goes in on the TV or on a billboard, or even like on a social film, a lot of people will see, and then be represented. It's just you acknowledge the fact that your category is there. While I think it's here, like it's still very like predominantly like white Caucasian people. Even if you see on the street, in the street there are not the same ethnicity. So it would be nice if you can be like even other minority, they're actually minority here, can be also represented in the art. Because when I arrived here, I opened a bank account. So I went to the post office because I didn't have the residency still. And then there was a guy behind me, and there was a student from, I believe he was from Nigeria or Congo. And he opened a bank account. So we asked for the same service, but in any of the pictures or the photography inside the bank, there was like a black person. And he's a customer like I am, but because there is this sort of like mindset of like, oh yeah, in Italy, majority of people are like white and Caucasian. That's why we just we put that sort of faces on our ad. Things are changing. I don't think it's just like a sort of racist thing. It's also like I think people are like, there's a sort of fear of like being judged as a brand, of like it gets into like a little more like a fear to kind of like not make mistakes, to have like peer clash. I don't think people don't want to do that, but sometimes with the client was like, it's safe if we just portray white people in our ad.
But so, and I know understand what you're saying. It's like not necessarily a racism thing from the businesses, but is there not a role for businesses, for advertising departments, for creative people in general to kind of push culture in a way that we see as the right way to go? Should ADs be putting a bit more pressure onto clients to actually have some more diversity rather than just accepting, okay, yes, we have lots of unrepresented people in our country?
Yeah, there is no, I don't think there is the kind of pushing yet. There is a little bit like backwards culture in this sense, like we're not there yet. I think there is we want to kind of go into that direction. It's not there yet, because I think like not being in a more liberal environment and having like more like restriction from politics and maybe like some other part, it makes the process slower. I think this is probably the main reason, but it's a shame because when you kind of compare, and we compare a lot, the work in here with what happened abroad. It's a shame because then you can see like abroad, like there is a lot of diversity, there is a lot of like representation, like everyone is to be represented. Like remember like last week I saw this was a perfume brand ad, and I wasn't super in love with the idea, but then I've got a lot of shots of like such a diverse cast, And the film was so beautiful because you can see all of these women and people that identify as women. And it was so beautiful because it's a very like huge array of differences, and everyone was represented,
Mm.
which I hope that it will come here. Probably, I'm sure it will. It will just like take more time.
Because even in the UK, we still get a lot of pushback about it. People feel that as soon as you see less, just straight white men and billboards, people are always, no, I'm always seeing LGBTQ people. I'm always seeing, non-white people. Like, why is this being pushed in my face? But they never seem to have the empathy of the other way around, where it's like, well, everybody else has had just, white folk shoved in their face all the time. Yeah, I wonder, because there does seem to be like design, art, politics, culture, it's all intertwined.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're often, yeah, I see it a lot where people like designers, artists, and even when athletes try and push something that's seen as political, they're told to stay in their lane. It's
Yeah,
such a shame.
no. Yeah, it's also like it's very difficult like how to manage these sort of things. For example, I remember from my previous experience, we were doing like a big pitch, and then one part of the pitch, you got these season moments, right? So you got like Father's Day, Mother's Day, Christmas, and now there is like the Pride Month. And it always like touch like a sort of like, oh, what should we do, like you have to be careful for how you talk about sort of stuff because it can be very political. So brand they're approaching this, they tend to be very safe. Like I can see like a lot of brand they're still like just put the rainbow on their logo, or like
Mm.
one of my clients was like, oh, shall we just change our packaging for 1 month? And I'm like, do you think is that enough?
Yeah, yeah.
Because like, oh yeah, but changing the packaging for months for us to be expensive. Yeah, but your customers, they don't know that, they don't care. I
Mm.
think if you want to do something for LGBTQ plus community, you have to give them something, and then you have to be honest, because I think as a basis, when you do sort of things like this, people will automatically think like you're a brand, so you're doing this because you want to make money.
Yeah, yeah,
So you are
exactly.
creating a halo of goodwill around your brand because you want to sell more. So you really have to prove that you really want to do something. So it doesn't have to be like a big thing, but it can be, I remember like at that time we suggested something like, can we use LGBTQ plus influencer for that month? And on social media, helping people, then they got some question and they don't want to ask, they feel embarrassed to ask to their friends. So like they feel they want to come out, but they don't know like how, what can be the right term, so when. Uh, so you offer like a clear help, and I think the community will appreciate that. Otherwise, you just like surf the wave. So even to kind of like when you sort of like touch these sort of topics, it's very important to kind of do that in the right way.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting there because obviously there is people that they do just do the thing for the month when really it's about awareness. It's like it should be a peak of the awareness, these kind of months, right? Rather than just all right, it's just this time. Okay, right, back in the box. All right, next year we'll get you out and play with you again. Um, Working in advertising, do you see a bigger role for companies? Should companies have more of a social role in actually trying to push culture in a certain direction? Because it seems that the reason they don't is their bottom line. They don't want to lose money, basically.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like in advertising, it's a business, right? So at the end of the day, people, want to have that sort of check at the end of the month. The
Yeah.
board wants to kind of be like, okay, we made a certain amount of money this year. I think advertising is a great medium to kind of like sort of like broadcast your idea and then start a movement. There are a lot of brands in the world they are using this. So I'm thinking about like, the last campaign for Dove, when they encourage women to go gray with their hair, and there's
Mm.
nothing wrong about it. It's very interesting, but even there, like Dove did this for like almost like 10 years. It's not like they just do one pick per season. They really like go hard in championing real beauty. that it became their strap line. So, and people believe in that because they really embrace it as a brand. Obviously, they want to sell their product, but they also like do something like concrete. Sometimes it's hard because it's the same thing with the greenwashing. You know, the company want to do a campaign to kind of
Mm.
saying like they're more sustainable, or like they champion diversity, and then you just speak to them. It's like, yeah, you want to champion diversity, but your board, they're all men, they're all white, they're all coming from the same background. So you people won't believe that, because now with internet, it's very easy to find out information. So, and then I have to say that it's that probably like the best moment when creative agency, a PR agency, then sometimes like they clash a little bit together. That's the moment when they join forces and then they say like, this would be a massive backlash for your company. You can't say that. And it happens a couple of times that you kind of have to turn around and just say things without really saying things. And that was the most frustrating thing, because the client really wants a sustainable campaign, but you can't, you are not really sustainable. So you have to go around. But I think the best thing is that when like the client is very like authentic and just say like, okay, we are doing this, like for example, and this is the reason why, for example, for this sort of projects, I love to work with startups, because we did a project for Oddbox, and they were like, we are basically fighting food waste. This is our business plan. There is nothing to hide. Everything is so simple, and it was just like so clear. There is nothing that you have to say but not say, and then it just went really smooth. It was such a pleasure to work with that brand.
So it's people who don't have a vested interest. They don't have a huge bottom line to lose. So they have more ability to say something that's actually needs to be said.
I don't think it's about like how big is the brand, because for example, Patagonia is such a massive brand, right? So, and then
Yeah.
they have got a really nice like integrity in when they talk about sustainability. They make sustainability, you know, the core of their brand, right? I think to do sort of things, you have to invest a lot of money, and then obviously sometimes brand want to kind of find like a shortcut. Yeah, but if we really say this in this way, maybe we can have like a slide of that pie without like you know, spending so much money to kind of change the production, or like you know, I do sort of things to align the brand more with this sort of like sustainable terms. But it becomes like difficult when you are a creative, because you kind of feel like, yeah, but I'm kind of saying a lie here.
Mm.
So it's very hard to work for those kind of clients.
That, yeah, I totally see that. Especially the older I get, it's like I feel when I was younger in design, it's like I was always like, oh no, we need to be telling the truth, we need to be honest, we need to be this. And then you see so much in the world where it is, yeah, lies. And it's the you say about Patagonia, and I totally agree. Obviously, they've under their founder an excellent company, but some companies are just so big they can say what they like.
Yeah.
Like Adidas or Nike and Adidas had the problems with the sweatshops. They just shrug it off. H&M the same. Apparently, they recycled their clothes, and it turns out a load of it's just like burned in incinerators in places. They can say what they want as long as we continue to like buy into whatever it is that they're selling.
Yeah, I think obviously like advertising is just like, you like just, you know, channel a message
Mm.
then coming from the client, give you the briefs, we want to say this. So you can sort of argue until a certain point, but then at one point, like, you know, they pay for it. So try to
Yeah.
kind of like try to kind of save your face. So sometimes it's like, no, I didn't make the ads. No, it was not me.
Yeah.
You know, it never happened to me really. Like I have been lucky and I didn't have to kind of I think every creative got some ads, then just like lock in a vault, and no, I don't want the world
Yeah.
to see it. I made it, like I don't want the world to see it. But
Yeah.
it didn't happen so often, so I've been kind of lucky in that sense.
Nice. So how do you get on with your writing partner? Like, tell us a bit about how that relationship works.
So when I started after MNC Saatchi, I was like, I want to be another director, like a proper, like not in a sort of like traditional team, like, but I didn't have any clue. I mean, I saw them, and for me, it's like basically I have to have a relationship with someone that it's not my girlfriend. basically. So yeah, they were doing everything together. And here it's a little bit more like I would say like an open relationship in Italy, so they can work with other people, they work independent. But there was really like, they go on lunch together, very like. So I interviewed a few people, and I found this guy he's a second generation Italian, Michael the piano, and then it was great. So he used to work at VMS, so he got more like a digital background. We were both like learning by doing, really, like
It's the best way.
yeah. And then we didn't have an experience together, so the first job was on a B2B agency, the first freelance gig, and then we went to bigger agencies like McCann, AMV, but also we work on smaller shop. We didn't really like want to specialize ourselves on one thing. We just try. I mean, with the freelancing thing, you got the chance to try everything. It's on the menu, so why not do it? But then it's really like a relationship with someone, if it kind of makes sense. So and yeah, you kind of get very close, you fight sometimes, agree, you kind of you agree, and then you just like you're really passionate about what you're doing, and then it's really nice. Then when I started with my girlfriend, she was like, why these people don't call you all the time, every time? Like, because I know that's fine. It's my creative partner. Or I remember Michael, he used to introduce me as his partner, and then people said, but you got a girlfriend. Who's this partner? Okay, my business partner. I
Like it's
guess
an open relationship.
there was like very awkward moments. But yeah, and then after this, I partnered with another great copywriter, Australian, Fiona White. We met at Hell Yeah, and different kind of vibe. Really funny girl, a really great writer, especially for comedy. And yeah, I think I learned a lot. You learn a lot from working so close with these people, and then you kind of share. It can go very well, it can go badly, and yes, I think like it's when you meet the first time, it's like a Tinder date. I mean, it's literally like a dating, but you're talking about work, but you kind of feel the chemistry between you talking about ideas. It feels like a date. It was weird. The first time I did it was like, this is weird, but
I found that so much. And it's actually that kind of energy that it is that kind of energy. So I love actually having these conversations exactly for that reason, because it's like you just get a different point of view. You hear about somebody's story and you're like, oh, and what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And it does just like a good one, just bounces and feels you so much energy from it. Like you say,
yeah.
like a good date.
Yeah, and also when you work together, that sort of ping pong between you bring the insight on the table and the other person start to kind of think about the film or like whatever would be like the medium they want to use, like, and then you just to build up the idea together, and then you kind of like create something from a blank canvas. And then you see it like flying out from your presentation deck into the real world, and then it's very rewarding.
Yeah. Actually, I'd like you just to finish it off, just to talk a bit about the human trafficking project that you did, because this one was super, super interesting, and it felt like it had like a different vibe to the kind of normal AD work that you'd do.
Yeah, so it started with the COVID. During the COVID time, it was like near the end, and then me and Michael, we were like, we never had the chance to do like a campaign for good in any of the agency that we work for. So at one point, we were like, okay, so if nobody give us a chance, we're gonna grab the chance, right? I always remember that quote from Denzel Washington. He did this famous speech at the university in Pennsylvania, who said like, to get something you never had, you have to do something you never did.
Yeah.
So we did it. And then we were like, okay, let's do something. And then we were like, okay, well, what do? We talk about like food bank problem. When you go into this kind of environment without having a brief, I was like, you have to kind of decide what's the most interesting topic, and by the way, we didn't do this to get awards or recognition. We just wanted to do it because at one point, like, I think it was a time where we were doing a lot of pitches, and then when you do pitches, like, generally the work you present on the pitch, rarely it gets made. And then also we had some jobs where we were like working hard, but then at some point the client stopped the project, close to the production, or maybe like you kind of want to create this really cool 360 campaign, and at the end of the day you just do like a couple of social media posts static.
Yeah, I've been there.
So we were like, no, we want to do something and go to the world, something really fucking cool, and then we kind of make it. So I have this friend of mine, Chiara. She's a caseworker, and she works for a charity that helps mainly women, that has been victim of human trafficking, to kind of like, have a job and be reintegrated in a normal life, having a normal life.
Mm.
So I talked to her. I was like, oh, that sounds very interesting. So I started reading a lot of things, and then I discovered that human trafficking, first of all, then there are 136,000 slaves in the UK, according to a research in 2018. So I was like, oh, that's already very interesting, because you always think these things happen in other parts of the world. You don't really think it happens in Europe or in the UK.
Mm.
And then reading and reading and reading, I found out that there is a common practice of the capture to kind of mark the victim with a tattoo with their name. Like, you put your initial on your shirt, or you just mark your cattle. And that was really like it really stood up in that moment. It was like, oh my God, you just basically like put your name on another human being, and then this person have to carry your name for the rest of the life. So we start researching, and then we come up with a few ideas. And one idea was about like, what about if we work with tattoo artists? Because I found out that the tattoo is generally like done in a professional studio. So the girl and the guy, they walk into the studio, and then generally the man, because generally is a man, said to the tattoo artist, "Oh, my girlfriend, she's also like groomed and brainwashed." So they say, "My girlfriend, she wants my name on her arm," and then I guess the two artists always have like weird requests. So you kind of feel there is something wrong, because when you kind of trying to talk to the girl, the capture try to take your attention and not talking to her. So you can't talk to her, and then there are some signs that you kind of understand there is something wrong, but because people don't have the knowledge, you don't actually know what it is.
Mm.
So it was like our first priority was like, we have to educate tattoo artists to kind of spot and recognize a sign, and then we kind of like try to help the victims during the healing process to kind of cover the tattoo and trying to write a new chapter. And then we kind of bring everything together about this sort of insight of the human trafficking always leave you a permanent mark on the victims or survivors. Can be visible like this time, but is always invisible. So then we put together like a pitch deck. And then we want to approach agencies, because we thought like, okay, if we got an agency behind, it can be easier. But then there were so many steps like to internally. So you have to reach the new business guide and have to reach someone else. So by the time we go to the ECD or whatever is the person, it's too late. So we approached like few charity in London, and then they're being very helpful, but they were saying like, it's very difficult to spot the tattoo because maybe the girl doesn't want to show you, and even on the medical report, like people don't actually sign that as like a sign of mark, or like it doesn't have a particular attention because maybe is his child, or maybe it's the name of her child or whatsoever. and it's very difficult to kind of like see this sort of, because obviously the victim is something that you proudly want to show. So it was very hard. So at one point, when you go through with this type of project, there is one moment when you kind of say, okay, it's done, like it's not gonna happen. And then I remember it was like a Saturday, and I said to him, okay, to myself, like, let's give it a last go, a last chance. So I mailed all the charities in UK that were like helping girls and people in general, because sometimes they're also men, to kind of like to get them out of this trafficking system. And they are like 20-ish, like from North UK, South, and so on. At that time, we had like a friend of Michael, who's a film director. So we put the link of this company. So we were doing something very professional. And Medal Trust replied to us saying, like, we've got like a few girls and survivors with a tattoo and want to do something about it. Do you want to put up a chat? And then the day after, we had a chat. They liked the project, and then we worked together. And what I really like about this charity is like, as we were talking before, like we don't want to kind of do a campaign, then shine a spotlight on the project, on a problem. We really want to do something long term. So what they did, that they opened a program called Tattooists Against Traffickers. When, if you are a tattoo artist,
Wow.
you can sort of like email them and just offer your service for free to help a victim. And you can join this program. They're also doing some events to kind of train them to kind of spot the signs and recognize it. It was really difficult and unexpected, because foolishly, like majority of people in advertising probably, they were like, like, we're gonna go there, like we just tell to the charity, you don't have to pay for anything, and then they will let us do whatever we want. And then suddenly, like, obviously, and I really respect that from the charity. They were like, no, we the sort of mental health of our client is paramount for us. So you don't just come here and take the story, sensationalize everything, and just run away. So we have to slowly learn that trust. And then I think Rebecca and Steven, they'd be like super helpful and super helpful throughout all this process. And the film we did, it was like a 3-minute film for social. We interview the survivor. It was really complicated because we have to submit the question before. During the interview, there was like an interpreter because she didn't speak English properly. And then we couldn't do the questions. So my friend was a K-word, because you have to be trained, because obviously you speak with people with like big trauma, PTSD. So I read the police report to kind of put the story together. And it's really it's really like horrifying and really like touching experience what the girl went through. So it was really like emotional. And when we wrote the script, we kind of want to be as genuine and real. So if you see the style that we use, it was very like understated, also a more documentary style, more than trying to do something super brushed and sort of very cinematic. First of all, because we wanted to make the story real. Second, because we have a budget of like 1 or 2 grand, so we couldn't afford but I think the fact that we made everything more understated, even if the numbers are very big, but we try to make everything very personal. I think that's the beauty of the campaign. And then the video and the script then you hear in the film is actually what the girl said during the interview. And there are some lines that really stood me a lot, especially when she said, but God had a plan for me to be free again. And I was like, it's really impressive thinking of all the things she went through, she still believes in God. She still believes in God. And then that was like, and then we did 2 days of shooting, one with like an actress for the first part of the film, because we couldn't obviously shoot the girl. And
Yeah.
then the second part, when you got the tattoo cover up, obviously it's the arm of the survivor. And we even there, like we have to plan everything very carefully. For example, a tattoo session went through 4 hours. So the DOP was allowed to enter 15 minutes every hour to film, because we had so much respect for the moment, the emotional moment, then the girl she was going through. Then we didn't want to really put her under. So even the lighting thing, we tried to look for the smallest and the most invisible, and try to camouflage everything in the studio just to make everything more relaxing. But it was a really interesting experience, and then it paid off sometimes. But I think apart the awards and the lines and then all the inches, columns and stuff like that, what I was really surprised is like the connection then other people volunteering they have with this project. Because obviously if you pick up some people to work with for this project, you have to assume that they don't have the same passion than you have. Some people legitimately, they want to be paid to do like to shoot the key visual of the campaign, or they want to be paid to do the VO. And a lot of people, they were just like, no, just give me like some expensive, pay me the lunch and the transportation. This project it's so interesting, it's so cool, then I really want to kind of be part of it.
Hmm.
And that it really surprised me, because when I approach the people, I was always saying like, just give me the time you want, just 1 hour or 2 hours. I mean, that it's still helpful, because you will take 1 or 2 hours off of our place. So yeah, it was really like, I think probably is the most, I think is the best project that I have done, and I'm glad I did it.
It's an absolutely incredible one. And it feels like that's the flip side of what the stuff we're talking about earlier, where it's like you're working on projects where we're working with that agency. It's like potentially like walking the line of telling lies, but then this kind of stuff shows an absolutely incredible project, an amazing thing to do, an amazing thing to put a spotlight on. But then, as you say, so many people willing to give their time, give their skills to support something like this. Yeah,
Yeah,
very inspiring.
and I think like probably if it were like an agency behind, they would have said, "Oh no, you got like an agency behind, so you have to pay me like a
Yeah.
proper like full rate." It was very like, it was really like nice, and we got like people from different backgrounds and trying to kind of input like you're my friend, and from charity background, copyright, and the film directors. And I think where there is this type of like different people from different backgrounds come together, I think is where the most interesting things happen. It happened again in my career, especially with my two last ECD. And
Hmm.
I kind of feel like this is a bit of a prejudice of our industry, right? So sometimes when you work with ECD, it's like X so and so, you kind of feel like, oh yeah, so I'm gonna do like great work because it's coming from a traditional. And I was the kind of guy until I work at Hell Yeah, and I met Dulce. She was the ECD there, but her background is more like film director.
Hmm.
And um, and then because she doesn't come from a traditional ECD advertising background, she was able to create something more interesting, and especially when it comes to
Yeah.
film and the crafting, right? Because I remember when I went to LES, so we did this project for Oddbox. So we were talking about like food waste, climate change, and she was like, "Let's make something funny." And at the beginning, I was really skeptical because, like, first of all, because I feel more secure to, because it's easier to make something serious and worthy. Funny, it's always more complicated, because if you make something wrong, you can look like stupid or dumb. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
like you,
like,
you're missing the point.
exactly. And then when she's like, "Oh, let's make something fun because fun has a big power," I was like, "Oh my God, I'm sure." Like, because, and in the end, we did something. It was really funny, and then it kind of like stood up a lot. And yeah, that again was just like, you know, it not because someone's not coming from a traditional background doesn't mean he cannot bring something interesting on the table. But as well, like, you have to be like open to not, start with the judgment. The same thing was like when I worked for John Creative with Kirsty Hathaway. She's a brilliant ACD, but she comes more from an editorial fashion background. And I think from her, I learned like, like when you think about an insight, make sure it's deeply rooted into culture. So something that needs to happen lives in the here and the now. Because sometimes creatives tend to come up with the insight is like high philosophy or like something that it's not very relatable or doesn't live in the now. And then when we did this project for like Luna Daily, it was like, this is a problem that is happening now. And then how can we, hack the, social media behavior? How can we how people talk about this in social? It's very like in the present. And then I think this with an insight like this, your campaign gets 10 times stronger.
No, it's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. It's been excellent to hear. There's lots of insights there for, I think, people from all sorts of different backgrounds. But just before we finish, tell us, how do you stay happy in your work?
To find finding a balance with like a private life or working life. I think that's important. Yeah, I think like when people say I want something, then live and breathe in creativity like 24/7, it's like just run away. That's my advice. It's you need to kind of pause, live, like have friends, it's going out, like even, and then you're gonna get inspired for your work. About it's really about like find the balance between like what you, and then sometimes it's difficult because I think when you are a creative, you really kind of like you don't see this job as 9 to 6, which sometimes is a good thing, sometimes is a bad thing. But I think you kind of really have to learn. I'm still learning to do it, to kind of draw a line, because if you rest for one day or you don't think about it and then you see the project again, you will find a solution and you're not stuck anymore. And then you can bring more fresh air and more new input, and it's just healthy. Just stay healthy with the mental health. Like, just stay healthy.
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for the conversation. Tell us, where can people find out a bit more about you?
So I'm currently based in Milan, but as I said, I work with clients all over the world. Like, I think in the description of this video, there will be my portfolio. Yeah, how do they influence it? Subscribe? No, there's no subscribe button. Like do they
like and subscribe? But all the
like
links down there,
all the links down below, something that will appear. Like kind of like I'm too boomer for this, but I think there is my portfolio. There is my Instagram, which I like to have like a side asset project where they do like a little bit of illustration when I got time. And if you are around in Milan, just let's have a drink together.
Amazing. So thank you again, and for everyone who watched, thank you, and we will see you on the next one.
Good. Thank you very much, guys, for having me here. It's been like a pleasure, and I hope I can inspire something and someone with my experience.
I think you definitely will. So thanks.